We'll now continue in English for a second round table dedicated to the vast topic of civic engagement. What exactly is civic engagement? What do we mean by this term? Why is civic engagement of such importance in today's society? And how can the Erasmus Plus program reinforce it? So we'll share nice examples, best practices, successes, but also challenges with our speakers based on their experience and on their projects. And so it's my pleasure to welcome our 5 panelists. They come from 3 different countries and 5 different organizations. So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us today. Are you okay? How are you doing? Good. Let me first introduce you. So I will start, Joanna Freitas, your participation coordinator for education and training at the Salto Participation Information Resource Center. Just in a few words, what is Salto? Just take the mic. It's much better. We can hear you.
I forgot that small detail.
So, small detail.
There are 11 Salto resource centers, and our S stands for support. So we support the community of practice of Erasmus Plus, the national agencies and the beneficiaries, future beneficiaries, and everyone working around youth and education and training, particularly in our case with the participation priorities, so concerning participation in democratic life, civic engagement, and EU values through training, materials, capacity building, etc.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Olivier Ginès, so you're head of European development at the Union Nationale des Maisons Familiales et Rurales, MFR, and this network of 400 family associations in rural regions provides vocational training, popular education. Leonard Litry, you are Executive Director of the Erasmus Student Network France, which welcomes international students and raises awareness about European and international mobility. Sara Pagliali, you are Director of the Italian Erasmus Plus agency in Dire since 2014, which covers school and adult and higher education. Frances Poisson, you are a researcher at l'École des hautes études en santé publique, focusing on the mobility of young people in Europe and the situation of young people in exile. So as during the first roundtable, I would like to start with a kind of definition. What is civic engagement? What do you mean by this term? And Sarah, if you don't mind, I would like to start with you. So from your European and specific Italian perspective, so what does this term inspire you?
Yeah, it's very difficult to say in just a few words, but civic engagement is belonging to a community, is this sense of being part of a community. It is the opposite of being excluded. That's why civic engagement is very much related with inclusion. And on the other hand, is also thinking that you cannot do it alone, that you are not an island. You have to do networking, you have to be together. That's why Erasmus and all the European program really are giving a concrete contribution to the creation of the civic engagement, sense of belonging, and European citizenship.
What we've heard earlier in the first roundtable, Erasmus Plus is really teamwork.
It is. Yeah. It is, because even if you are not doing cooperation, partnership, but you are just doing mobility, it is not only your individual growth, it is something that make you be more aware, and you through all the knowledge and meeting with our other culture and other languages.
Yeah, thank you. Frances, so what is your view on civic engagement? Perhaps you can give us some examples of different types of civil engagement you have studied involving your young people.
Yes, I can talk more about young people because I'm working on that subject in my university, and I also work in a youth work organization. So I can also take some examples from my professional practices. Sorry for my French accent, but I'm French or Breton. So I'm not able to
We have all
to make
accents.
a Britain accent in English, but I'm trying to to do
We
it.
understand you. Go on. No problem.
So yes,
You forgot the
maybe
question.
yeah, no, I remember. um,
Yeah.
so the idea of civic engagement, to define it, we can talk about maybe three different levels of engagement. The informal part. So for example, in Rennes, we have some people who are making parkour activities. So these activities are not really organized, but they are self-organized. But this guy, so it was some teenagers, and now they are making lots of parkour in different countries of the world. But they don't have, for example, Erasmus Plus funding to do that because they didn't apply. So they will not have some if they don't want to apply to this kind of funds. So that's, for example, some informal engagement or informal participation. We can talk also about non-formal organization. So it's more linked to the youth work sector, or in French, éducation populaire, popular education. Concerning these youth work activities, for example, our association in Rennes are making some popular education activities about ecological and climate change. We can create, for example, some pathways to make some links between different trajectories of young people who are engaged concerning climate change and biodiversity, for example. And sometimes this kind of organization can have EU funds for Erasmus Plus, or from other program also, EU program. And the third part concerns the formal engagement. So, for example, in Rennes also, because I'm from Rennes, as you understood, we work with the Regional Council of Brittany about the Youth Council. And so in this Youth Council, they have also a climate commission. And the important thing is to understand that the same young people can be in the different form of engagement. So one day, young people, a teenager can be in a meeting for the Climate Commission of the Youth Council, and another day, that's possible to be involved in a climate march, for example, or in an activity of a youth work association concerning climate issues also. So you have the three different levels or spaces. Some researchers worked about a research project concerning space and forms of participation. The name is Party Space. So we have you have a good website if you want to check it. It's participate.eu. And maybe one important thing also is to think about the trajectories. So because as the youth period is between childhood and adult life, that's important to think the links between engagement and transitions, and so to support the non-formal, informal, and formal engagement in a global perspective.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joanna, over to you. From your point of view, what are the key elements of meaningful engagement?
So in Salto Participation Information, as I said before, we work very closely with Erasmus Plus stakeholders, and we have built a definition of youth participation that I think it's suitable for other age groups as well, where the first important thing to retain is that participation is a right, being able to take part in society, in decision making. That's a right that we all have. But for that right to be enforced, we need to have the right means, the space, opportunity, and also support to do so. So we cannot expect people to just participate out of excitement, but we also need to provide them structures that allow for them to fully participate and give informed opinions and feel like they matter, that their voices are actually being heard and not just taking up a seat at the table and not being truly involved in the process. So for us, the result of this putting together means, space, opportunity, and whenever needed support for people to take part should result in them being able to express, to be active in their communities, but at the same time to have an influence over the outcomes. So if policy is made about young people, for example, they should be also part of the decision, or at least have the opportunity to really influence the outcome and not just be invited to debate for an afternoon.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you. Let's focus now on the reasons why it's important to promote and to encourage civic engagement and EU values in particular today. And Olivier, over to you. So what does it mean in particular for youth of today and also for those who live isolated?
Thank you. So we speak English.
If you want, you can speak French.
Maybe it's better because we don't have headsets here. Okay, I speak
Yes.
English. Yeah, for MFR, we are association, family association. So it's really the heart of what we are to be involved for 80 years. MFR were born in rural areas in Occitania. So they people and the families in the association fight for the rights of young people in rural areas, for education, to keep rural areas alive. So first of all, it's our reason to be MFR. And also, as engagement start from the people personally, my word ended on 24 February 2022, if you see what I mean. And so I have the chance to live in a new world, and we have all this to build together for peace. And we talked about it before with the previous roundtable. I think it's important to say that with the young generation, they have to learn that, for example, Europe, one of the goals was, and I hope is still, peace. And also this idea that we talked about before, so I want to insist that it's really important to be open to the world and to be open to oneself, to yourself. And in this world of global challenges, we also talk about biodiversity, about all this climate change information. The change starts not in the air, but in the territory. So it's really important for isolated the young person. We also have MFR in Reunion Island, in Guyana, in Caribbean, Polynesia, and I forgot some. But we work with all the isolated people who are trained in vocational training. And as we are also a non-formal education organization, we try to combine both non-formal education project in Erasmus and formal education projects.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Leona. From your point of view, what do you think, what could be greater civic engagement bring and imply for the youth of today?
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. I will also continue in English. So for us, so we are part of ESN France, the Erasmus Student Network, but I can also speak on behalf of the whole Erasmus Student Network, which is present in 45 countries. We all recall that united in diversity is the motto of the European Union. And we all know that nowadays, I think that we need to equip young people with strong intercultural skills, as well as a strong sense of belonging to something which is common, namely Europe. According to us, there is a need to improve the participation of citizens in democratic processes. And we think that we need to enable young people to experience it on a concrete level, starting at a local stage, but also then to promote it at a European level, because we can see that when it comes to promote, for example, participation to the European elections, sometimes people, they also need to understand what policies can bring to them at a local level. either in in a school activity or also in some youth work engagement. We also think that it's important to understand the European Union because we know that Erasmus Plus can be a concrete example for young people, but there are so many other things like the Schengen space, for example, the right to freely move between states that needs to be experienced in a concrete and real manner. And also regarding this sense of belonging, we think that most of the people who are experiencing an international mobility can feel both the differences, but also what unites them. And actually, when you think about how the Erasmus Student Network was created, it was actually thanks to people who experienced the mobility. And when they came back to their home place, they were saying two things. The first thing was, hey, it was so cool. Maybe we should invite other young people to experience this kind of mobility. And I think that in 2023, the ambassador program from both agencies is also towards that, like to have some face of mobility at, people who experience mobility. And the second thing is, okay, we know our country, maybe we can help others to also understand the different codes. And the two last elements are for me, like lifelong learning. It's not only when you're young that you can learn something, but also when you're adults, but you need to start at some point, and it's better at an early age. And the last point would be to understand that I think that young people, they need to remember their role as peace builders in Europe, especially today.
Yeah, thank you. And Joanna, what do you think? How the younger generations are democratically and civically engaged today?
So I'm going to follow Saltopi's research again. Over the past years, we've developed the youth participation strategy based on the EU youth strategy and also the rich knowledge existing in national agencies, Saltos, the Council of Europe, and their researchers, and RAY Network as well. And it has been classically established. There are the classical forms of participation, which are very much associated with partisan participation, but also formal structures as youth councils, structures that require young people to enter an institution or formally join a group. But then there's the traditional that I think by now, alternatives that by now are probably not that alternative forms of participation. When we talk about activism, online activism as well, we see then studies show that young people are driven by causes rather than by institutions or a desire to be in policy making, which also comes from the fact that they don't see themselves represented in political institutions. So they choose to engage around those institutions and create a change they want to see by also doing things they are passionate about. There's artivism where young people use art to say what they want to say and to create change, and so many other examples. And I think something interesting to keep in mind as well is that participation doesn't only occur at policy level. So it's not only the young people who are in formal organizations and advocating and lobbying for change that are actively participating. They are doing a brilliant job, but so are all the young people creating change from their local communities, from their house, in their school, with their teachers, with their youth workers. It goes from changing individuals and mindsets to creating cultures of participation to then make sure that our policies are representative and meaningful and make us want to defend democracy as well.
Step by step. Thank you. And how do you think that the Erasmus Plus program reinforce and promote civic engagement and EU values? Perhaps we can talk about a bit more in details about your initiatives, about your projects. And Sarah, we know that the Italian National Agency coordinates a long-term activity called PEACE, which stands for Participation of Erasmus Alumni in Civic Engagement. So how do you think? Can you tell us a bit about this?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to the words of the Director General of the European Commission on the Erasmus program, which is really contributing with concrete action to the civic engagement and the defense of European values in
Could you
all
just keep a little bit-
in all the activities, mainly through the mobilities, to the cooperation partnership, in which this is one of the priorities with the Jean Monnet program, which is now open to also to school, vet sectors, and with Discover EU, as we heard before. But in addition to that, we, as Italian NA, set up what is called in technical name long-term activities. That is a transnational activities among national agency, and we coordinate other 10 countries. In France is one of the participating NA, but also Spain, Belgium, Sweden, Czech Republic, Portugal. So 10 countries very active in this. The idea is very simple. Since 1987, Erasmus has been giving opportunities to people to really make a concrete experience of active citizen, because if you go for a mobility, you really come back and you are a changed person. You open your mind, you then feel this sense of belonging to a community, as I said before. So the idea is to better use these people, better valorize these people. We have millions of Europeans that had this opportunity of an Erasmus experience. So what to do? It's really to enhance the existing network, like, for example, Erasmus Student Network. We also in Italy work a lot with the ESN Italy, but also at the European level. So the existing network, but also other network, for example, of ambassadors for school sector, for adult education sector, for vet sector, because what I found always, let's say, misleading when we are speaking about active citizenship, European citizenship, is linking that concept only to young people. No, you should do it in a lifelong learning perspective, starting from a very early stage, that is a school, and ending with the adult people, because there is big need, especially today in this international background. So we are trying to to valorize these people at the local level, regional level, national level, but also at the European level. The idea is to have this moment in which the people can meet and start a new project, for example, or some activities to involve other people with less knowledge, not only of the program, but all the EU value. That's the idea. I always say it is different if I speak about Erasmus, or because I can speak very well in a technical way, or if, for example, a teacher, a student, an apprentice do with their peers. It's a peer learning, and it is more effective. So I say to the ambassadors, please network together and then spread the voice. It is now your time. It is the right time. We are going to vote next June. You have to stand up and speak for Europe. That's my message. Thank you.
Yeah, strong message. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Back to France, Française, with you. So can you tell, you have a program, the Alliance for Innovation program, which is called Building Alternative Skills to Implement Creativities and Commons. So how do you think this program, this initiative, motivates social change?
That's a really good question. So
short answer.
Yeah, in 1 minute. Yeah, so no, that's really important, because the thing is we are trying to make some links between community organizing. So in France, usually we are not working on community organizing issues with these terms, but as we are working in vacant places, so to organize some temporary uses in the framework of common spaces. So we are trying to find some vacant buildings, and with some municipalities, we can have some contract to occupy them. And in Italy, it's really developed. So with for example, the Bene Comuni. And so this idea of community is really important. And for us, so in France, for example, we can talk about tiers-lieux. Now, some tiers-lieux are developing some temporary activities. Some are more in a longer way of developing to develop their activities. But so for us, the idea is to use the common spaces as spaces for learning. So before we were young, so we worked about youth activities. Now we are quite older, so we are trying to learn, but that's the same. And what we observe is that maybe with the VET providers, so the vocational and education training providers, it's not so easy to organize some peers activities. And in the youth work framework, we are more this practices of peer learning. So we are trying to develop these new trainings based on the informal knowledge of the inhabitants of the neighborhoods where we are. So our place, the name of our place is Le Bâtiment à Modeler in Rennes. So if you want to check it on Instagram or Facebook, you can find some information.
Okay, thank you. Olivier, over to you, perhaps from a more general perspective. So how do you think Erasmus Plus enables civic engagement and prepare people young to their role as European citizen, and what are the benefits of for the youth of today?
I think we have, we could say, cooperation between MFR and Erasmus for more than 20 years. I think, first of all, Erasmus is connected to the public policies of education. So it's fundings, but it's also based on public policies. And the interesting thing is that this space is open to participation and to contribution from citizens. And at the same time, Erasmus gives opportunities, project fundings, to bring more space, to connect more people, young people or not young people, from different areas. And this is a really open field. For example, to talk once again about the Outre-mer, overseas territories. For example, personally, when I write a project, I always include Réunion Island, Polynesia, for a discussion with the national board. And Odile is sitting just in front of me from our national board. And so we have many opportunities, and we have to push the system and the opportunity as much as we can. So I think this is really important. And also I insist, because I work for 15 years with the Erasmus Agency, the way they facilitate, they organize, they connect with people is also really supportive to dare to some new projects, some a bit strange sometimes projects that can connect people. And just to finish on the idea, because I know we have to be short, for example, we organize, thanks to youth participation projects, we organize some informal events next to official events. We talked before about the European Youth event. So with Erasmus youth fundings, we organize like informal events just next to the official event for European Youth Conferences, for example. And it's really supportive for isolated young people to be able to be in the same city at the same time, having an informal dialogue with the officials. Like Leonard, for example, the first time we met was online, just when the COVID appeared. He was in Zagreb at the European Youth Conference as a French youth delegate, and we were online with the young people from MFR, and this was the start of long collaboration.
So he was inspiring.
Yes, yeah, a lot. He was in still. Okay, I won't say more,
okay.
but I think
you can elaborate. I can imagine that. And Joanna, from your point of view, from the SALTO research perspective, how does the Erasmus Plus program allow citizens to be involved, to be engaged, and to participate?
I think we've been mentioning lifelong learning in the previous panel and this one. And I think Erasmus Plus is a beautiful illustration of what that can look like. So you can start by, I'm lucky enough to have worked in both the youth work community and formal education. And I've met teachers who had the twinning projects in kindergartens where they were getting parents from different countries together to create a storybook, and children 3 years old, they were illustrating stories together with other 3-year-olds from other countries in Europe. And it can start then, and it can go as long as you are willing to engage in it. There's no age limit. There's no limits to also what you can do with Erasmus. I often joke, as long as you know how to justify the need for making it an international collaboration, there's probably a way to finance it with Erasmus, because it covers the different processes that I believe are fundamental for participation, that from learning about participation, which is of course important, that we know our institutions, our systems, but then also the learning by doing and the learning by experience. So when we talk about how there's no better way to feel European than to go on exchange, but participation can also be experienced. So if my teachers or my youth workers are involving me in decisions about the project that I'm participating on, I'm also living participation and not just hearing about it. And then you can also become the person who creates change to projects. So I had a beautiful example of a student who started as a very, because of her previous experiences of experiencing labeling, and it's not for me, I call it the not for me syndrome. It's like, I'm not that person, I'm not the engaged student, I'm not the engaged citizen. But thanks to twinning, who forced her to engage with interculturality, she started exploring and overcoming these things. And 2 years later, she created her own organization to support other Brazilian young people in Portugal. So she realized the reason she didn't want to engage in the beginning was because she felt alone. And through engaging with these dynamics, she realized, I can be the person who makes the others feel less alone. And she created her own movement. So I think it really illustrates how participation is a process, and Erasmus Plus is a fundamental tool to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you. We'll close on this question, Leonard, with you. So can you illustrate things, initiatives, or what you have heard from the Erasmus Student Network? And why do you think it is important to involve young people from the outset in the development of projects or in governance role?
Yes. Thanks to the different funding opportunities and call for tenders, I think that the Erasmus Plus program is offering a large scope of activities, not only for young people, as Sarah was mentioning,
exactly.
also adults. Also, I mean, lifelong learning is fully part of the Erasmus Plus program, and I think it's important to put an emphasis on that. And I think that we most of the time we speak about the young people, but not enough about the youth work practitioners, but also the community of practice from the higher education and training. I mean, it's a global ecosystem. And at ESN France, we have developed our own vision regarding the mobility experience. This is what we called Parcours de la Mobilité, or mobility pathway. And we are working towards 5 steps. So how to get informed, because information is something that needs to be also improved, as we mentioned previously. How to get prepared, because once the project is ready, how to make it happen, so to say. Then how to get integrated, because sometimes there is a will from an individual to exercise this right of mobility, but then how to get integrated concretely in a local community. How to get involved, and I think this will be like the focus of my intervention, and then how to value this mobility experience. Regarding the step called to get involved, ESN France and the ESN network has been involved in a lot of activities. So for example, the Erasmus Generation Participation and Engagement project was aiming at introducing and engaging young people in European Parliament's work by raising awareness about how it works, basically, what is the role of the EU and its values. Social Erasmus is also one of our flagship projects, which aims at promoting social attitude among young people so that they can facilitate their integration through volunteering activities on site. And then I'd like to introduce also the Erasmus Generation in Action project, which is a project which will target young people to help them to exercise this active citizenship thing. And within the ESN network, we put an emphasis also on young people in governance. We think that it's cool to speak about youth participation. It's also great to enable young people to experience it in a concrete way. For example, in our board of directors, we have a lot of people who are under the age of 20, and they're steering an organization at a national level, and they organize activities for their peers. So yeah, I think that it's important to think about young people not only as young people, but also as future
what Sarah
citizens.
mentioned, exactly. Thank
Exactly.
you. This dimension is very important to mention. Olivier, when you put in place civic engagement activities, is it easy to put them in place, or?
Depends. This is my answer. No. Yeah, it's easy on one side because, as we said, we are associations, and I wanted to mention that you stole for the name of this, the title of this conference, what is in our movement, which is a movement in action to who works for citizenship and engagement. So this is the leading sentence we have in MFR. So it's easy to implement something because we have this governance that is pushing us in this direction. Then it can be sometimes complicated because we are both, as I said, vocational schools and non-formal education association. And sometimes it's not so easy for the staffs to combine everything in everyday life. So it's interesting when we manage to as you said before, to work with like some path, like lifelong learning path, starting from primary school to nursing homes, yeah. So to say. So this is interesting when we do that, but it takes time. And once again, the diversity of programs allowed by Erasmus, there is always a solution. As you said before, we can find one, but the complexity is that we need some staffs who are ready and dedicated to be able to make some surveying of what is possible, and then to be able to implement that. We, for example, this morning, you see in the back of the room, there was a workshop with all the consortia from Occitanie in vocational education, and Fabrice in front of me also was co-facilitating this workshop. So it takes time, it needs some facilitation, and it's not so easy to organize it. But yeah, in the field, the results are always beyond the expectations.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, when we talk about obstacles in relation to the promotion of civic engagement, what comes up to your mind, and how did you overcome, or how should you overcome these obstacles?
Well, there are lots of obstacles when you are thinking that, for example, we are living in a more skeptical European background. Some citizens, well, I'm speaking about now my experience from my country. The Euroscepticism is really growing, and there is this, let's say, the sense of putting more emphasis on what is national rather than European. It is a temptation, let's say, that is becoming wider and wider. First of all, I have to say, I always say that Europe should be better communicated. There is sometimes a lack of communication. Citizens feel Europe as something apart. Europe is like a stepmother for someone. Because they say, oh, we have to do this. Europe says that we have to do this. And this is because of, I think that we really have to do an effort. I'm speaking about as a national agency for a very famous European program that is considered really the flagship, the jewel of the crown of the European Union. And I really think that we all have to communicate better what Europe is really coming from and what is really doing for citizens. Too many things are taken for granted. The free of mobility, it is something very precious. It's a treasure that we have to defend. And I take back the words of Olivier, and I think that we have to remember that Europe, the European Union was born after the Second World War, was born for peace. And for example, we have to put this value at the very heart of our Europe and of our life as a European citizen.
Yeah, thank you. Leona, do you think or do you observe a kind of Euroscepticism or disengagement or fatigue from young people who are perhaps less motivated to give up their time for engagement?
According to us, like formal, informal and non-formal education are providing different opportunities for young people and the community of practice. Something I'd like to say is that for me, youth work shouldn't be only considered as a tool. It should be also an objective. And actually, it's one of the 4 priorities of the Council of Europe Youth Sector Strategy 2030. At ESN France, we are fully committed to work on a complementary approach through our non-formal education activities. We organize them through the different projects, but we also try to put some energy about how to value this international mobility experience, as well as the commitment of our volunteers in the local sections through different activities, also for our beneficiaries. I already spoke about social Erasmus. Something that we noted from young people is that sometimes there is a fatigue due to some disillusion between all the energy young people would like to put, even the most motivated one, I would say, and the outcomes of their advocacy work or of what they try to stand for. Sometimes it's not so easy because there is not a real recognition sometimes of the work of the civil society. But I would encourage young people to continue actually to advocate, but also to be active citizens in their, at their own levels. I'd say also that sometimes there are some young people who are just overburdened because they make a lot of efforts, but sometimes they just don't know how to act sometimes. That's why it's very important to work on both information, but also how to build more trust in this common project, because it's not automatic, so to say. Everybody needs to make an effort so that this common Europe can exist.
Thank you. Now, my last question, and Joanna and Francesca, perhaps you can answer this one. What else is needed to improve and to further improve civic engagement? What, from your point of view, Joanna, if you would like?
So I will build on what Leonard was saying. I think we're all experiencing in our countries the fear of the populism rising, the disinformation, the fact that it's so easy to create a narrative that turns Europe into the evil stepmother and makes it look like we would be better on our own. And the only way to fight that is to build trust. And going back to what I said in the beginning about not being tokenistic and not inviting, either we're talking about young people, but also disabled groups, people in rural areas, anyone who is invited to represent a group in some kind of decision-making process should do it in a meaningful way. And then, of course, that requires that they are informed. So it means that someone will have to make sure they receive information in a way that's understanding to them, that they have the support to do it. feeling empowered means also that they're invited to spaces where they feel confident and comfortable, which can also be a real challenge when we talk about formal organizations, how to create those spaces, and then to create a decision-making process that creates space for those people. We know how much we ask when we challenge national agencies, when we challenge project beneficiaries to do this, to create such processes. We know how difficult it is, that it takes a lot of capacity, human resources, but also a lot of expertise and empathy as well. So we think the key is really sharing the enthusiasm. All of us are doing it to a lesser extent than other. Let's listen to each other. Let's share the excitement. So then when things are getting really heavy and we have another 1,000 things to do, let's not push participation to the side. Let's remember, why does it matter? It matters because it is at the root of everything we do. And sharing knowledge, we think it's also fundamental. That's a big part of what we do in Salto, but what is done here today, bringing together formal education and non-formal education, and understanding that people participate throughout their lives. So there's no need to separate the youth work from the school. We can learn from each other, we can work together, and to create a place where everyone feels entitled to use their voice, because we don't give voices to anyone, we create spaces for their voices to be heard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Frances, I leave you the last word.
Yes, so I agree concerning the mobilization of maybe youth on the margins. I think it's really important, and maybe I can give some examples concerning the situation of exiled people in exile, and especially young people. So maybe that's quite important to have a global view about their situation. So because one of the, that's possible to organize some, for example, mobilities with young people in exile if they are refugees, but for example, if they are living outside, if they don't have any houses, that's quite difficult to organize some mobilities with them, for example. So that's why, for me, we are working about the idea of community, but the community in opposition to some public action also. So, for example, the housing policies are not okay, and we need to work even with the help of Erasmus Plus program to improve these issues. And that's really interesting because that's a way also to work about interculturalities issues. So, for example, a few years ago, we organized some exchanges with some Afghan people from Rennes, with some Afghan people from Timișoara in Romania. And now we are working with some Turkish guys from Turkey and some Turkish guy from Rennes. So that's a possibility, that's a good opportunity to do that with the Erasmus, with the framework of the Erasmus Plus program. And also that's really important for young people in exile because some of them, they have some complex migratory routes. And so, for example, we are working a lot with Italian association, and some exiled people traveled in Italy during their migratory routes. And so if we want to organize a youth exchange in Italy, we need to work about these migratory routes to consider them and to create a framework of neutrality. And that's really a nice experience because the young people in exile, they are also travelers. And so that's important to consider the freedom of mobility, but also the freedom of migration.
Thank you. I think we could continue talking for hours, but I see the timer. Time is running out. So if you don't mind, perhaps you stay during the network time. So if you have questions, you want to continue talking with the speakers, they are here and they can share your ideas and the perspectives. So thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you for sharing your insights and for this inspiring talk. Thanks a lot.